In the previous lecture, we talked about getting off to a good start, and that's very important for confidence, which in turn gives us our fluency and coherence, which is 25% of the band descriptors. Another 25% of the band descriptor score that you get will be for lexical resource, and that's what we're going to focus on in this lecture. Lexical resource is about your range of vocabulary, and if you want to show your range of vocabulary, what you should not do is repeat words too often. This lecture is all about avoiding this repetition. So, if we look at the band descriptors, we can learn why paraphrasing is so important. Although in the previous lecture we talked about the importance of using the words in the question to help us get started in our response, once we're actually past the introduction of our response, we should try to avoid using the same language. Repetition demonstrates a lack of flexibility with language, and that word flexibility is very important because it comes up in the band descriptors if we look at them here. Band 7 uses vocabulary flexibly to discuss a variety of topics. And Band 6 has a wide enough vocabulary to discuss topics at length and make meaning clear in spite of inappropriacies. As you can see, to even score a Band 6, you need to have a somewhat wide range of vocabulary, but we're aiming for a 7, so we need to use this vocabulary to discuss a variety of topics. Now, let's have a look at a couple of examples to see why this is so important. Would you rather live in a hot place or a cold place? You may want to pause this video just for a moment to practice this answering this question, and compare it to the two answers that I'm going to put on the screen in a moment. Okay, so first answer. I think I would rather live in a hot place. I like hot weather, so a hot place would suit me. It's quite hot where I live, so I like where I live. Or, personally, I'd rather live in a hot place. I'm happiest when I'm in warm weather. I can go to the beach and enjoy sunbathing. The temperature gets pretty high where I live, so I'd be happy staying here. Which answer is better? Clearly, it's the second one, and that's because it avoids repetition of particular expressions. It is not overly dependent on particular words, like the first one is, as we can see here. We have rather live, which appears twice, and we have the word hot, which appears 4 times and also appears in the question itself. With this second answer, you can see that we've paraphrased. We still have rather live and hot, like I recommended in the last lecture. We use that vocabulary, but we paraphrase with synonyms and different ways of saying the same thing. So we've got warm, we've got the temperature gets pretty high, and we've got I'd be happy staying here rather than would rather live here. How can we improve our ability to do this? Well, it's very important to acknowledge that paraphrasing in the speaking test is different to paraphrasing in the writing test. When you're speaking, you don't have the time to go through all the synonyms you know or all the different ways you know of paraphrasing. In the writing test, you have that time. You get to sit there and you get to think about it. You can take that moment. But with the speaking, you're on the spot. As a consequence, it's all about preparation when it comes to the speaking. So here are the do's and do nots of paraphrase practice in speaking. And like I say, it's going to be all about preparation. So what we do want to do is play the IELTS word association game, which I'm going to teach you in a moment. We're going to play the 1-minute topic card game. Again, I'm going to teach you that in a moment. You're going to have conversations in English. Listen to talks on a variety of topics, and TED.com is a really good resource for this, as well as a few YouTube channels like The School of Life and Vsauce. Read. I always recommend reading, even though we're talking about the speaking. Still very, very useful to learn new words and new ways of saying the same things. and of course practice regularly. What should you not do? Well, do not try too hard to demonstrate your range, otherwise you'll end up like the overcomplicated candidate or the exam voice candidate that we talked about in the previous lecture. Do not take really long pauses when trying to find the perfect word, or do not try to use that language that stalls for time. Don't use too much well, all that sort of language there. And do not, of course, repeat the same words over and over. We're trying to avoid repetition. Now in this lecture, we're mostly going to focus now on two of these do's, and they are the two games that I have highlighted above. We're not going to look at lots of different vocabulary, so do not get the idea that we're going to do that. That is too vast a topic for us to cover in this express course for the speaking test, but I am going to post some links at the end of this video which should direct you to different resources that can help you in terms of improving your vocabulary. So let's start by looking at the word association game. Now this game is typically played with 2 or more people, but it can be played alone for practice purposes. The typical form of this game is that you would take a word, any word, for example, the word hot in Would You Rather Live in a Hot Place or a Cold Place? And then you would take it in turns, you and the other player, to say the first word that comes to your head related to the last word that was said. Or just keep saying new words to yourself if you're playing alone, based on the previous word that you said. So, for IELTS practice, the twist on this game is that you should write down every word that is said so that you can turn it into an answer to a question once you've finished. Okay, so let's have a look at an example of how this would work in practice. Let's look at the one that we've just talked about, the word hot. Would you rather live in a hot place or a cold place? So we started with the word hot, and if you're playing alone, then you would say the first word that comes to your mind after you said the word hot. Or if you're playing with a friend, then they would say the first word that would come to their mind. And you would end up with potentially a string of words that looks like this. Hot, warm, high temperature, summer, beach, sunshine, sunbathing, swimming, ocean. Okay? And then you would take these words and you would try to turn them in to an answer, ideally by saying them out loud rather than writing them down, but you can write them down if you need to. But you try to turn these words into an answer to the question that you posed initially. Would you rather live in a hot place or a cold place? I'd rather live in a warm place. I love the high temperatures in summer. Some of my favourite things are sunbathing at the beach, swimming in the ocean, and enjoying the sunshine. Now notice how much vocabulary that is using. You're forced through the constraints of the game to turn those words into a legible answer. And it sounds quite good. So let's have a look at another example. Shopping. Do you enjoy shopping? Why or why not? So I use the word shopping to get the game started, and we can go with a string of words like stores, credit card, shopping bags, clothes, fashion, sales, and an answer that looks like this. Do you enjoy shopping? Why or why not? I do. I love going around to lots of different stores with my credit card and coming out with loads of shopping bags. I'm really into fashion, so I'm always buying clothes, particularly when they're on sale. Notice we've changed the formation of some of these words, and we've also changed the order, and that is absolutely fine. There is no rule that you have to get them in order or in the right formation, so be flexible with the language. Final example here, school subjects. So notice you can use the two words together to create a compound noun. What school subject did you enjoy most at school? So we start with the word school subjects and we go mathematics, equations, sums, logic, teacher, homework, calculator, and we can end up with an answer like this. The subject I enjoyed most was probably mathematics, maybe because working out equations and sums with logic was simple for me. And we had a great teacher too. And the homework was usually easy because you could just use your calculator. Now, these answers are quite long. Your answers don't need to be as long as this, particularly in part 1, but this is a great way to practice using varied vocabulary when speaking about a range of topics. It is all about preparation when it comes to paraphrasing. It's not about being in the moment because you don't have the time in the speaking test. It's all about the preparation. Let's think about the other game I suggested, the 1-minute topic game. Again, this game should ideally be played with 2 or more people, but it can be played alone if necessary. You need a little bit of preparation here. So what you do is you take a number of cue cards, and on each of the cue cards you write down a topic. For example, sport, or family, or summer. You shuffle those cards and you place them face down on the table so you can't see which card shows which topic. Set a 1-minute timer on your phone or your watch, and now turn over the first card and start the timer. Now, speak about that topic. The aim here is to talk about the topic for a whole minute without stopping and without any preparation. Have your friend take notes, or if you are alone, record yourself. And after you've finished, play the recording back and note what you talked about, particularly paying attention to the words that you repeated a lot. And then try to think of alternative ways that you could have expressed those thoughts. Again, you're preparing for paraphrasing. So the game might look a little bit like this. You have a list of cards, you turn one over, and one of them says home, and you speak about home for a minute. Anything at all related to home you speak about for 1 minute, recording yourself or getting your friend to take notes. You finish that one, you turn it over. You get the next one, and that one says television, and you speak about television for a minute. Finish that one, turn it over, find the next card, and that is sports. And you talk about sports for a minute. And you keep going and you keep going and you keep going until you run out of cards. Now, if you find this a little bit too easy, then feel free to increase the difficulty by adding an extra minute for each topic. You might even like to do it halfway through. One particular variation of the game that's quite tricky but quite fun as well is that you increase the time by 10 seconds for each card that you have. So we started with home there. We talk about home for 1 minute, then we move to television, and that would be 1 minute 10 seconds. Then we move to sport, which would be 1 minute and 20 seconds. Then we move to colours, and that would be 1 minute and 30 seconds, and so on. And you can play around with this game to whatever matches your ability level. And over time, you should feel more and more confident speaking about a variety of topics, even ones you were not initially so confident talking about. So those are 2 ways that we can prepare for paraphrasing. But as I said, if you want to specifically improve your topic-related vocabulary and learn exact words and expressions related to these topics, then I recommend looking at a couple of different books that are designed for this purpose. The problem in this course is that it's an express course, and so we don't really have the time to look at long lists of vocabulary for different topics, particularly when there are so many resources already out there. So a couple of books that I really recommend are these 2. Check Your English Vocabulary for IELTS by Rawdon Wyatt. I believe there are 3 or 4 editions of this out now because of the popularity of it and how useful it is. I recommend this to a lot of my students, and they've all told me how useful they find it. And the other one is a Cambridge English publication. So the same group that creates your IELTS exam have put out this book, and that is Vocabulary for IELTS Advanced by Pauline Cullen. And Pauline Cullen also does a very good book on grammar for IELTS as well. Both of these books come highly recommended by me and have been lauded by my students as well. So I can definitely recommend those. And finally, of course, Udemy courses. There are a couple of Udemy courses online that specifically focus on IELTS topic vocabulary, but there are also many topics that focus on vocabulary in general related to different topics. So I definitely recommend checking those out. Whatever you decide to do, make sure that you do try to improve your vocabulary either by reading regularly, checking out videos related to different topics, practicing the 2 games that I've mentioned here, or specifically checking out the books that I've mentioned above. And you can check these out by clicking the links that I've provided in the resources section of this video.